The Search Podcast USA Edition series is sponsored by Ascen. Ascen is a top employer of record in North America that exclusively helps staffing and recruitment agencies hire contractors compliantly throughout the US and Canada. Ascen's all-in-one white-label platform handles onboarding, timesheets, payroll, benefits, insurance, invoicing, and optional financing so you can grow quickly in the US and Canada. Start growing your staffing agency in the US today with Ascen. Visit us at ascen.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Search Podcast. I'm Elliott Manning, the Managing Director of Payment Recruitment. In a different setting this week on the episode, I'm actually in South Africa and have some. I was explaining to our guest that I've got some very interesting artwork sitting behind me, so hopefully it doesn't distract you too much. Got a very interesting story that I'm excited to hear about. We'll let Mike take away the introduction to you guys and explain who he is and who he works where and everything else.
Thanks, Elliott. So I'm Mike Rutkowski. I'm the managing director of Eames Group. We're a global recruitment brand focusing on primarily insurance, financial services, and technology. Started out in the UK. We then went into Asia. So we have locations in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and Manila. And I am in New York. So as of the last 2 years now, New York has been operating, and we recently launched Philadelphia about a month ago.
Awesome. So, Mike, tell me a little bit about the business, what you guys are doing over in the US. You know, everyone that I've worked with is familiar, with the business in the UK, and the presence that it's got there has been really, really solid. You know, in terms of where you guys are going in the US, what are you doing? What's going on? Where are you at?
Yeah, so essentially, it's good to know, like, the Eames Group itself has three brands, right? So we have Eames Consulting, which is the
Yeah.
traditional staffing and recruitment business, which is what we've so far launched in the US. We also have our Eames Partnership, which is our financial services executive search and advisory firm, which has not yet launched in the US, planning to do so this year. And then we have our ECMS brand, which is our consulting, managed service, project delivery business, which is also has not launched yet in the US. So if you're looking for
Yeah.
at the US, Eames Consulting is the first brand we have, and we're a recruitment company. Again, traditionally, we cut our teeth in the insurance market, some specialized niche businesses. 5-6 years ago, branched out into other locations in the U.S. specifically. We're going to be building out our insurance. We're doubling down in our market, but we're also expanding into technology, very niche, three areas of technology that we're going to be growing, as well as financial services. So
Awesome.
essentially, what you'll have at the end is if you're looking for a company that needs a global delivery in around these different areas, that it very seamlessly can work with Eames across
Yeah.
multiple continents and multiple cities.
Fantastic. I mean, you guys have had incredible success since you kicked this all off in New York, which hasn't been a long period of time. But I've seen some substantial growth, attracting some incredible talent, people like yourself joining the business. How are you doing that? Like, I guess there's a lot of people out there that want to understand the growth mindset that a lot of businesses have. And I don't want you to give away your secrets because that wouldn't be the right thing to do, I suppose. But what are you doing to get these people into the company? What's the plan long term that's kind of made this happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, first of all, you have to be able to articulate a strategy, right?
Yeah.
We have a kind of a unique 3-year growth strategy that we're really excited about. So that generally is exciting for people to hear, right? As long as you're able to articulate it, you have a clear vision of what you're trying to accomplish, and you have kind of a very clear culture, kind of like what our culture looks like, the type of people that would fit in well. So I think from that point of view, I don't want to downplay it. It is difficult to attract good people, right? It's super competitive. There's loads of good recruitment businesses out there. There's
Yeah.
loads of companies hiring, right? But I think what really separates us from it is having that kind of high quality kind of reputation, but also really be able to articulate that strategy and say, hey, this is vision. This is what we're trying to do. Do you want to come in here and be part of it? And that's, I think, super important. It's what's important that got me into the business as well.
Awesome. And in terms of like the caliber of people that you brought in, again, like I can't say enough how good they are, but ultimately, what's the plans for the business long term? I know you've got the New York set up and you're looking at other maybe locations or have other locations. Where do you see the business going in the next few years that's really going to take it from where you are now to the next level?
Yeah, you're going to see. I mean, right now we're, globally. I mean, in the U.S. we're small, right? We're 10 people right now, and we're gonna, our plan is to, triple that over the next 2 years. But globally, we're 130 people, about 100 people
Yeah,
in sales, right? Over across location. So our plan is next 3 years to double the size of the business.
yeah,
That's 200 plus people. Out of that, 30 to 40 of them will be sitting in the U.S. and we're going to be branching out across the U.S. So we're not just going to be sitting in New York and Philly. Um, Kind of the way we operate, especially building a contract business, I do think it's important to be close to your client base and close to your
yeah,
candidates. So depending on where the markets you're approaching and attacking, so we will be kind of building smaller teams across the U.S., smaller offices, so we
yeah,
have that access. So it'll be somewhat of a decentralized business. I mean, it is very different than some of our competitors that kind of sit in, one location, two locations, and they primarily work the phone. But kind of our strategy is being in front of our clients and building those
yeah,
meaningful relationships, which I think is important when you're going into certain markets.
yeah. When you say being in front of them, are you saying like physically meeting them and being in their office, entertaining them, or are you referring to, video calling? Like what's getting in front of your clients to you guys?
I mean, ideally, it's getting in front of them in person, right? I think post
Yeah,
COVID, we've all experienced, and you could be $1 million biller, or there's still $1 million billers that didn't really have to leave their work location, sit in their office on their phone and do video right off their computer, and it did work good. But I do think there's something to be said about building strong relationships, and I think as the market changed, I think a lot of those people felt like they started getting boxed out, right, of
yeah,
their client base, and the people with the stronger relationships were able to still maintain, a level of work and, you know, generating revenue from that client base by
yeah.
actually knowing them. So I think by knowing them and meeting people and building that relationship is kind of it's a bit more difficult, right? To kind of X you out, I think a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, it's doing as much in person as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the key to this. And I say this to a lot of people, like, if you want to make stand out, in the US market, you've got to be able to do that. And if you can't, then it's going to be a lot harder. Do you think that's been the key to the success in the US where you've got to where you are, in my opinion, in a quick amount of time, based on the fact that you've got that kind of maybe aggressive approach, meeting businesses and clients and getting out there a lot more than others are able to even do so themselves?
Yeah, it certainly has. I mean, I think we're able to build a relationship quicker, right, with the client by being in front and center with them. But it's also allowing us to kind of um, get opportunities quicker, right? In other words, identifying an opportunity pretty quick that
Yeah,
might be with the client base. I think it also a lot more referrals come our way that way.
yeah,
People kind of have a bit of a trust. There's a lot, I think it's also quite good with candidates as well of building that relationship. But you know, a lot of our focus right now is going to be building up contract. We do perm, right? And we launched the U.S. business in perm, and I do believe, at perm you don't probably have to be as much at the client site as you
yeah,
probably do. Certainly for our focus on building out contract as well. To me, it's an absolute must. It's kind of the way I came up in the business myself.
yeah.
Um, and we're going to continue to build up that relationship. So hence why we're going to have a decentralized kind of office model.
Yeah, awesome. And what's your take on the contract piece in the US? Because 5 years ago it wasn't a huge thing doing contract recruitment in the States. I don't know why I think it was maybe more the expat businesses that went over there weren't doing it enough, and they just weren't really understanding of the whole legislations and compliance maybe side of it. But do you see that has become like a bigger thing now or an equal thing to doing direct hire perm recruitment?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think part of it is right is the investment you have to put into a contract business. It's expensive, right? You're going to
Yeah.
invest probably what 2.5, $3 million to get the business off
If
the ground, right? So
if you
a
don't
British,
use an EOR, I suppose that is right.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so if a British company's looking to come into the market, right, and they're going to then generally usually do perm first, right? You can get quick wins, and you could use that revenue then to float and build a contract business. I think if you look at the U.S. recruitment market and the traditional larger U.S. recruitment firms, the bulk of them are contracting. And if you look at the spend, right, we have 216 billion roughly spend in U.S. recruitment. You got about 80% of that sits in temp and contract. So you're almost like
Mental.
looking at a massive market. And I just think you take that and then you look at it, understanding the complexities and the laws in different states, and you're looking at the
Yeah.
U.S. almost like 50 different countries, right? Which is quite different than from the UK. So you have different legislation, different employment law, but then also how do you operate in the market differently? There's
Yeah.
cultural differences within each market. which I think is kind of difficult to get your head around it unless you're physically here. And I think that all
Yeah.
those things just make it more difficult. You've had quite a few companies come over and do really super well in building out perm businesses. I think a lot more have struggled building out the
Yeah.
contract businesses, and the ones
They
that have done it have kind of adopted the philosophy of being on the ground.
Yeah, it's definitely becoming a bit more of a thing compared to what it used to be. And I have to drop them in because they do sponsor the podcast, but ASEN, who are fantastic, employer record and, are very well established in the US and what they do. If you want to do the contractor side of recruitment, they can take over the compliance and everything. Obviously, it comes with a fee, but ultimately it does make it a lot easier for a temporary basis or even long term. But when you're looking at the levels that you're doing, naturally you're gonna, potentially take it in-house because you can afford to. So, and you're making more money doing that, I suppose.
Yeah, but I listen to my advice to anybody just getting starting out. If you don't have strong legal counsel, you need to get an employer of record and you need to get somebody who understands compliance in the US. So by using a partner, to me, is a no-brainer, right? Getting it.
Absolutely. Cool. Absolutely. That's why I wanted to just kind of throw them into the mix.
Yeah.
A couple of more questions for you, Mike. So in terms of the US market and being based in New York, is there a reason why you're in New York and not in Florida or Texas or, you know, Carolinas? Is there a reason that New York is the place that you've got your business situated?
Man, that's the $1 million question that everybody always asks, like where to
Yep.
go. I mean, there's so many good recruitment markets, right? You can kind of go into almost any market and probably be successful. I think for us, for Eames, I mean, since insurance was our bread and butter and known, New York is a big insurance market. It just kind of made
Yeah.
sense to be here. And then financial services also, right? So it's almost a bit having that pedigree, that flag, like in New York, you branch out. But I can't really see New York is expensive.
Yep.
It's difficult, right? It's very difficult to build a business in New York. Don't get me wrong, and it's quite difficult to attract talent as well. And
It's a
there's,
competitive, right? That's the problem in New
it,
York. It's extremely competitive.
it is very competitive, right? And you're thinking about like depending on what you're building out, if you're going to build out, clean energy, you're building out some areas of tech, oil and gas. Um, you might not come into New York, right? There's other great locations like Dallas or Austin or Tampa or Miami. Nashville's a great location. Atlanta, West Coast, right? There's some challenges. It's a big market, right? But
Yeah,
there's certain markets in the West Coast, and then you have like Denver and Phoenix, right? So
absolutely.
it's kind of $1 million question where to get it right. The way I look at it though is since we're putting a focus on contract, I want to be as close or easy access to my client base.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? I mean, I know that New York is expensive, but ultimately it's the best, in my opinion, location you can be for pretty much for a majority of the sectors out there in recruitment. So, if you're going to be in New York, you're going to make as much money as you can, and you can still be probably more successful there, but it does come at a little bit more of an extra cost to make it work. As far as I'm aware, anyway, I've done it a little bit myself, and we've ended up in Texas and Austin, but ultimately we've done the New York side of things, and we recruit for a lot of firms there, so we're pretty familiar with the struggles, and we see it a lot. But it's still, again, my number one location in the US to be as a business.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. I mean, but listen, New York is not cheap, but neither is Austin, right? Austin's
No,
catching up pretty quick. So
yeah, it's changed a hell of a lot since 5 years ago when I was kind of hearing about it, and then it's just blown up since, basically. And in terms of the plans for you, and for those listening, those that are recruiters that are looking to come to the US, work the US market, and join a successful business, is there anything that you're looking out for in particular when hiring people in the US that you think may be different to maybe a British firm or an American firm? Like, what do you guys need at the minute? What's the hiring situation for you?
yeah, I mean, we are hiring, right? We're scaling and we're looking at people in New York, and now that we have Philadelphia open as well, we're looking in Pennsylvania. But it's a good question. I mean, we're looking for people, right, that are able to adapt and they're coachable and
Yeah,
they're able to deal with challenge, right? We're building a business from scratch, right? We're not as established as some other of our competitors are. We're 2 years in the U.S. and we're only a few months into tech, although we have some people in the business that have done it for quite a while. So I think it's really about being entrepreneurial and able to adapt and probably working with a little less structure. Being coachable I think is really important, and being
yeah,
able to adapt your market. And I think the flexibility of being able to put the time in, right there, it's an investment in time when you're building a business and you're building
yeah,
a desk from scratch. And I look at it like look at it two ways. There's people that like are in recruitment for lifestyle, which is great, right? And there's people that are in recruitment for careers, and I kind of look for the
Yeah,
people who are in for careers, right? They put a
yeah.
little bit more, they got skin in the game, and I think they get more out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge difference, and they're the ones that we try and find when our clients request recruiters from us. But sometimes it's not easy to figure out straight off on the outset, and it takes some time to realize sometimes that it's which one they are out of the two that you just said. Um, and last question for you, Mike. And have you seen a big difference since the election in the market in the US? Are you seeing stability? Are you seeing growth? What are you seeing for the 2025 year ahead?
Yeah, I think 25 is a good question as well. And listen, I mean, we're only we're a few weeks into post,
Yeah,
change of the administration, right? I do think that people were kind of cautious going into the election. I think things became more stable, right? Once that was kind of finalized, and coming into 2025, things were starting to pick up
yeah,
for us. I mean, I think you make your market, right? So you could operate in a tighter market and still do quite well, which is you're making your market if you're good at it, right? But definitely seen a bit more stability. Definitely seen a bit more growth. I think December was we've had some of our teams had their best December ever in the history of the business.
yeah,
I've talked to some friends and some competitors that have experienced kind of the same thing, and January has been off to a really good start. I mean, it looks like for some of the markets that we're in, 2025 will be a good year for us. I think it's also going to be a great year for contract over the next couple of years, where I think
yeah,
when you're going into pre-COVID, so 2017 up until like 2022, it was a great perm market. But if people were in recruitment prior to that, they remember the days of when it was pretty much a heavy contract market,
yeah,
2013, 14, 15. And I think we're going back to that cycle. So I think, where companies are doing less hiring of employee base, or maybe not as growing, they're going to need temporary labor to kind of deliver projects and get their
yeah,
work done. And I think it'll be a very good opportunity for people that are in contract, especially people that want to get into it.
yeah,
So, yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, are the tougher times behind us? I don't know. I mean, if a
Yeah,
$1 million question again, if I had a crystal ball, I don't really know. But my guess is, things are kind of looking up or kind of past the rougher road. And if you
yeah,
focus in the right markets, you dedicate to what you're doing, you're not too broad and too wide, I think you could do quite well
absolutely.
right now.
Mike, thank you very much. That is a wrap. I really, really appreciate your time, your insights, of everything that you've, given to the audience that are listening on this. If anyone is interested in an opportunity in New York or in Philly, please reach out to these guys. Phenomenal business. Really, really genuinely have done incredibly well since inception in the States. And trust me, I've seen a lot of firms in the US that have not necessarily gone in the right direction that quickly or at all. So, really, like, honestly, hats off to you guys. Reach out to Mike, let him know if you have any questions. And again, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Elliot. Appreciate the opportunity to come here. Good seeing you.
Pleasure.